Pushing Back the Shadows, support and awareness for mental health. Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Pushing Back the Shadows podcast. My name's Alex Davis, I'm the founder of Pushing Back the Shadows. So, day 5 of our Borderline Personality Disorder Awareness Week. So far, really good. Really enjoying it. We're getting good response, so thank you guys, those of you who are responding. If you have missed any of the content, don't worry, it's all on the Event Hub. You'll be able to find the link in the description to the podcast. We've had some great content from Brittany Ryan, from Sarah Cardwell, from Cheryl, even a video courtesy of Mind. And then tomorrow we've got a guest post from Ara coming up. She's a returning guest author on our blog. And it's really good to have her back. And she's got a really good piece written for you. So stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. But, as I mentioned, Borderline Personality Disorder Awareness Week. So I've got a question to start you off. What do you know about borderline personality disorder? What do you know about borderline personality disorder? Now, there's no right or wrong answer here, okay? It's not a test, honest. You don't have to know lots about it. It's alright if you don't know anything about it. Or it's alright if, hey, do you know what, you're already an expert, you know everything about it, you know everything that's going. But, that is what this week is geared for. Informing people, educating people, sharing people's experiences with borderline personality disorder, because I find that in terms of awareness, this one doesn't get a lot of awareness, and there are a number of myths, shall we say, that surround it, making it, a lot scarier than it's actually meant to be. So, what I'm going to tell you is about my borderline personality disorder battle. Now, granted, it's only been recently diagnosed. Sometime, I think it was back in about May or June, it was diagnosed. But it's one of those things that chances are it's been there for a very long time. And actually looking at some of the symptoms, looking at some of the different aspects of it, I think it has been there a long time. Now, don't quote me on that, because for all I know, when I go for the therapy that's meant to help with all of that, they'll actually turn around and say, well, no, it's a bit recent. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's part of the problem. I don't know. But there are different aspects of it that I do recognise, different aspects that I want to talk to you about today. Now, borderline personality disorder, there are 9 things, roughly, that people look for when they're diagnosing it. Okay, so you've got, and this is something that Brittany Ryan did actually talk about, because she's one of the really unlucky ones who's actually got all 9. But so you feel very worried about people abandoning you. You have very intense emotions that can last from a few hours to a few days and can change very quickly. You don't have a strong sense of who you are, and it can change significantly depending on who you're with. You find it very hard to make and keep stable relationships. You feel empty a lot of the time. You act impulsively and do things that could harm you. You often self-harm or have suicidal feelings. You have very intense feelings of anger, which are really difficult to control. And when very stressed, you may also experience paranoia or dissociation. Okay, now those are taken directly from the Mind website. There is a link on the blog as well on the introductory video that they kindly let us use. Just to clarify, that's not endorsement, that is just them saying that we could use the video for our week. If you want to refer back to them, then do have a look, mind.org.uk, and they will have all the information there as well. But so those are the 9 things that they look for, and they say that normally to be given a diagnosis you have to have at least 5 of those 9, and that they've lasted for a long time or have a big impact on your daily life. Now granted, I don't quite know how long these have been there for. Okay, I only get dribs and drabs, so to speak. But they do have a big impact. And I do have at least 5, so apparently that qualifies me, at least according to my psychiatrist. But so I wanted to have a look at some of these. Now, one thing you'll have noticed previously is that I've talked a lot about emptiness. In my post, The Harrowing Void, I talk about how my depression, or at least as I thought it was then, tends to take on that form of emptiness and numbness, almost like a black hole inside of me just taking all the emotion away. Now that doesn't mean I'm emotionless, because I do get emotions. Shocking, I know. But those emotions are either not there, or usually very intense and difficult to control. One example that Cheryl's talked about previously, and this is when we've been to see the psychiatrist, is that sometimes I'll be playing with our 4-year-old, my stepdaughter, and Cheryl will be looking, and we're kind of getting all excited, I might be tickling her or, winding her up, and she looks and she's not sure who's winding who up, whether I'm winding her up or she's winding me up, but we're both getting higher and higher and higher, and it's a bit out of control. Or there'll be times when I'm just sat there, staring at the computer screen, playing a game, whatever, and there's just almost like there's nobody home, because I'm just that spaced out, because there's nothing in there. And sometimes these go hour to hour, day to day, or even occasionally, minute to minute. As such, the intense ups and downs, we thought initially it could have been bipolar, and apparently that's a reasonably common misconception, because some of the symptoms, especially that fluctuating mood, the way it changes and goes really high to really low to really high, is a symptom of bipolar. Except with bipolar itself, they look for that over longer periods of time. You tend to have good weeks, bad weeks, not good hours, bad hours. So that's apparently one difference, because we did explore this a lot. We thought that it might be bipolar. Okay? With me so far? I certainly hope so. So we've covered intense moods, we've covered emptiness, and then we go on to anger. Well, I've always had, and this may come as a bit of a surprise, I'm not sure, but as I was growing up, I always had quite a strong temper. And it was always very, very difficult to control. It's mellowed a lot, mind you, in in the later months. But it's always been, you get those feelings, and you can't control them. And even now, if I get really, really cross with somebody, I find those feelings incredibly difficult to control. Which goes on to that anger and that difficulty controlling that feeling. But that's not all that there is there? There's a couple of other things that I'd quite like to talk about. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll have a look at the next couple. You're listening to Pushing Back the Shadows. So next up, in terms of the symptoms, we have the difficulty forming and maintaining relationships. Now, some people seem to focus on the word relationship and think it's more like a romantic relationship, but in actuality, it is just any kind of relationship, friendship, whatever. And that's something that I can definitely relate to, because I've found that I do have that difficulty. I mean, go back to my days in high school, I was always kind of more of a loner, because I just didn't quite know how to interact. I didn't quite know how to actually form and maintain those friendships. And reportedly, this is something that people actually didn't notice, which I suppose, you can kind of understand, especially if you kind of keep yourself to yourself. But it's always been a difficulty forming and maintaining those relationships, which ties in nicely to the fear of being abandoned. Because I do get that. I keep thinking that people are going to walk away. That I'll say something, or I'll do something, and somebody will go, yeah, do you know what? No, stuff you. Bye. And the trouble with that, actually, is when it does happen, it kind of reinforces that feeling. This is something that Cheryl's talked about a bit in her post for this week. Because sometimes it does happen. People do walk away, and that reinforces that feeling. But it's something that I've noticed I've had for a little while now. I say a little while, I can't really put my finger on how long, but I know I've definitely got that. And that then ties in. It's almost like a vicious circle, really, because it ties in with the difficulty actually forming those relationships to begin with. Because you think, well, yeah, I'm going to start trying to be their friend, and they're just going to end up walking away. They're going to walk away, what's the point, etc., etc. And it's always there in the back of your mind. It also leads into that paranoia. Because I remember a couple of occasions, especially when I was working for the bank, I'd go in on a really bad day, maybe I'd self-harmed, which is another point that I'll come on to in a minute. But something would have happened, it doesn't matter what, I'd have been on a bad day. And we got all the traffic again. I'm really going to have to start timing this a bit better. But so something would have happened, and I'd be sat there, and I'd be thinking, everybody can see. There's something wrong. Everybody knows. Everybody's staring at me. And it's partly to do with that anxiety that I've got. Because apparently I've still got anxiety and depression. This is just an additional thing. Isn't mental illness great? But, you get the feeling that everybody's looking at you. Especially when you're already feeling stressed, it just intensifies. And you know that it's completely irrational. Because it is, how many people are actually going to notice? I mean, for example, when I was at this Christian festival, Spring Harvest, we ended up leaving early. And I think I've written about this at one point, I can't remember. And in my mind, suddenly I was aware of exactly how many people were in there. Exactly how many eyes there were. Bearing in mind we were like 2/3 of the way towards the back. But I thought everybody was watching. Even though half of them couldn't see me and didn't even know I existed. But it was that intense paranoia. Because really, let's be honest, how many of those people in that audience were going to be looking at me? As I say, we were about 2/3 of the way behind everybody else, so 2/3 of them would have been looking at the stage still. The third that was actually behind us, yeah, maybe some of them would have looked, some of them might not even have noticed. I mean, after all, how many people might have tunnel vision or something, or target fixation, they're so fixated on the stage, they're more or less blind or oblivious to anything else around them. But that paranoia creeps in. It feeds the fear of being abandoned. And it leads to the difficulty forming and maintaining relationships. Which apparently, given that I've got a family at the moment, I'm doing well, according to my therapist. And I say at the moment. That's again the fear of abandonment and the paranoia talking. But, And actually, as a side note on that fear of abandonment, Arguments. They're a really good thing to fuel that, because you think, oh my goodness, well, how could they possibly want to spend time with me now? Surely they're going to think I'm really, really bad. They're just going to walk away. And the worst part is you can't even stop yourself. You can't stop yourself from having that argument, because everybody argues. It's a part of life. But it doesn't stop you from feeling that way. Genuinely. It really doesn't. Now there's two more I want to cover. But again, we're going to have a little break. If you guys have any questions, then please do ask. I'm not an expert on this subject. I'm still learning. But it would be great if we could learn together. So I'll be back in just a moment. Enable Pushing Back the Shadows to continue supporting people in the mental health community, their friends and their family. By pledging just $1 a month, you could help us to continue supporting people with depression, with anxiety, with bipolar and other mental illnesses. You can also unlock exclusive rewards, behind the scenes, sneak previews of upcoming posts and much, much more. So head over to www.patreon.com/Alex Davis PBTS to find out more. Okay, so the last two on the list, at least on my little list, because I don't tick all of them. But at least I say, don't tick all of them. I think I possibly might. Because not having a strong sense of who you are, that's definitely one that I've felt. But anyway. These last two that I'm going to talk about kind of tie into each other a little bit. Self-harm and acting impulsively. I mean, I guess you could say, a lot of self-harm isn't necessarily premeditated. In some cases, yeah, fine, it is. But a lot of the time, people would say they almost feel like they don't have any control over it. And that does feel kind of true, even though usually I'm reasonably in control. Reasonably. But acting impulsively is something that I've done. I'll be looking at, say, music or games. It's not things like, because on the website, on Mind, it lists things like binge eating or using drugs or driving dangerously. I don't think I drive dangerously. One or two people might correct me, I don't know. But I don't really do the binge eating or drugs. I say don't really. Maybe occasionally I eat a bit more than I should, or eat unhealthier or something. Drugs are a no. But there are other ways you can act impulsively. Things like, oh goodness, that's a game I really want. Yeah, okay, it doesn't matter about the money, I'll get it. And I know I've done that, ordering things that I know I shouldn't, buying things that I know I shouldn't. And it's important here to differentiate between the normal kind of impulses and these kinds of impulses. It's not like spontaneously deciding you're going to do the washing up, or you're going to go and give your partner a cuddle because you think he or she is having a bad day. It's not that kind of impulsive. It's the kind that's more unhealthy. I mean, thinking about it, how many of these things did I actually need? How many albums have I got that I don't listen to? I've just kind of gone, yeah, do you know what? I want it, I'm going to buy it. Doesn't matter about the money, we'll deal with that later. And that's the kind of impulse that people tend to focus on. Because you can almost feel that you're getting a bit of a disapproval from them, because it's, we've got no self-control, no concept of money. And yet that's not quite the case. The concepts are there. It's just difficulty controlling them. And that brings me nicely onto the self-harm. I mean, we know that I've got the history. And I've talked a lot about the different reasons why. And those are all on our Understanding Self-Harm page, so I'm not going to go into them now. If you want to check them out, the link will be in the description. But it's something that a lot of people would see, and some people will say it's for attention, some people will say it's for coping, whatever it's for. People see that, and immediately it's got that stigma attached, and that's possibly where some of the stigma, the problems come with borderline personality disorder. Now, in terms of me, those are some of the symptoms I exhibit. Let's get that right. And as for causes, don't know why. Don't know why. A lot of things, apparently it's a combination of factors, but it can include stressful or traumatic life events, genetic factors, losing a parent, abuse or neglect, those sorts of things. And to be perfectly honest, I have absolutely no idea what causes it. I have absolutely no idea. I don't know why I'm like this. But I know that at some point, it will get more manageable. Now, one of the other things I wanted to cover with you guys is another thing that I found on Mind. And that's ways to cope, kind of the self-care for it. Because that's the thing, we talk a lot about self-care, but we don't necessarily know what to do. And that's something we haven't actually mentioned so far on the website. Now, they give a few good examples of things that you can do, for self-harm, rubbing ice over where you want to hurt yourself, take a cold bath, that sort of thing. If you're feeling a bit anxious or panicky, focus on some of your senses, a hot drink, so you touch, you taste, you smell. Write down everything you can think of, try and get it about where you are right now, thinking about where you are. Again, engaging your senses. If you're feeling sad, depressed or lonely, you can write all your feelings out on a piece of paper and tear it up. Listen to an uplifting song or piece of music. Write a comforting letter to yourself, cuddle a pet or a soft toy. Or a 4-year-old, she's actually quite good on the cuddles. If you're angry, frustrated, rip up a newspaper, hit a pillow. Throw ice cubes into the bath till they smash. I do like the sound of that one, actually. And then in the longer term, talk to people. Keep a mood diary. Plan for the difficult times. Those sorts of things. Make a self-care box. With favourite books, films or CDs, a stress ball or a fidget toy. Helpful sayings, notes of encouragement, pictures or photos that you find comforting. That sort of thing. There are plenty of different ways that you can self-care, and I'll include the link through to this this particular page. And who knows, I might even write my own post. But the important thing to remember, and this is something I come back to a lot, is whether somebody you know, or even yourself, has been given a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. What does it change? Because people keep asking me what it changes. Yeah, okay, having that label helps me identify what I'm struggling with, helps me work out where I'm going next, and helps me to come up with those kind of, for want of a better word, but the combat tactics for it. Recently I've been playing Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, and one of the things that they encourage you to do is surveillance, kind of recon, then go in. So, you look through your binoculars, you scan the base, it marks your enemies, it marks the points of interest like the mortar or the gun emplacements, the resources, that sort of thing. And as soon as they're you've marked as many as you can, that's when you start going in. You look for the patterns, then you look to see where the best way of approach is, whether you've got to take people out. And again, your choice. By that I mean, either tranquilise them, knock them out, or shoot them. But that's the kind of analogy that I'm getting at here. Having that label allows me to look and say, okay, this is the problem. This, and this. So this is the target, borderline personality disorder. These are the guards, if you like, the symptoms. So I'm going to look at all that, and I'm going to work out my approach to it. But equally, even though you know that, what does it change? You're still the same person that you were before your diagnosis and after your diagnosis. So if you know somebody who's struggling with this, take a moment to familiarise yourself with what they might be going through. Equally, remember that it doesn't change them. Yeah, okay, it might be difficult, balancing those mood swings and worrying about, whether they're going to feel anything again. But at the end of the day, they're still them. They're still worthy of your love, your attention, your care. It doesn't change anything. I hope you guys are finding this week helpful. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, we've got a guest post from Ara, so do stay tuned for that. That'll be going up 8:30 GMT. And then on Sunday, Cheryl and I will be over on Facebook and doing a live video. I'll confirm the time tomorrow. And we'll kind of talk about some of the things we've learned, some of the other thoughts that we have on it, and we'll be answering any questions that you guys have. So do tune in for that. We'd love to have you there. Make sure you say hi where you're watching from, that sort of thing. And yeah, we will see you then. So take care, guys. I will catch you next week on our podcast. You've been listening to Pushing Back the Shadows. To find out more, head over to pushingbacktheshadows.com and hit subscribe to get all of our latest updates straight to your inbox. Alternatively, connect with us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/AlexDavisPBTS, or you can visit us on Twitter at AlexDavisPBTS. Enable Pushing Back the Shadows to continue supporting people in the mental health community, their friends and their family. By pledging just $1 a month, you could help us to continue supporting people with depression, with anxiety, with bipolar and other mental illnesses. You can also unlock exclusive rewards, behind the scenes, sneak previews of upcoming posts and much, much more. So head over to www.patreon.com/AlexDavisPBTS to find out more.